We have a major update on the New York Knicks and Julius Randle. As we recently learned, Randle went down with a dislocated right shoulder, and we didn't know if he was going to miss months or a few weeks with the injury. But now, after a few days, we now have an update about Randle, and I'm happy to report it's good news. We're going to break down this report about Randle's injury and so much more today. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now and make sure you have notifications turned on so you don't miss a second of the new content. And now, let's get started. We have a major update on Julius Randle's injury. As we just told you, Julius Randle hurt his shoulder and dislocated it in the game against Miami, where the Knicks were blowing them out. And unfortunately, we didn't get an update for a few days after he got an MRI. But now, after a few days, thanks to NBA insiders Shams and Adrian Wojnarowski, we now know the update on Randle and his injury. According to them, sources indicate that Knicks star Julius Randle is expected to be sidelined for at least a few weeks with a right shoulder dislocation. It appears to be a sigh of relief for New York, as initial reviews of the MRI reveal no significant damage. This is good news for the Knicks and Julius Randle, as the initial interpretation of this injury had him potentially missing a few months, which could have meant that he would be missing the rest of the season. However, it is interesting to note here, SNY and NBA insider Ian Begley does note that there's nothing conclusive as of yet regarding Julius Randle's timetable per league sources. Source said Randle will be out at least a few weeks, which was obvious given the shoulder dislocation. Surgery hasn't been ruled out yet, but testing to date has led some to the optimism it can be avoided. Going into this report a little bit further, Ian Begley states that Julius Randle's absence is expected to be weeks, not months, following the shoulder dislocation he suffered on Saturday against the Miami Heat. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN and Shams Charania of The Athletic reported on Randle's expected time missed and noted that the Knicks were optimistic after Randle's MRI was reviewed. Randle took a hard fall late in the Knicks' win over the Heat on Saturday afternoon, and the initial x-ray that day showed that Randle suffered a shoulder dislocation. Shout out to Ian Begley, Adrian Wojnarowski, and Shams Charania, all great NBA insiders giving us the latest updates on Julius Randle and his injury status. I gotta say, this is the best case scenario for the New York Knicks if Julius Randle does not need surgery and is only gonna miss a couple of weeks. Because at the time when the injury happened, it was projected that if it was really bad, he could miss the rest of the season. So to go from that to potentially missing a few weeks is absolutely good news. I said it in the last video and I'll say it again. Julius Randle is not replaceable. The Knicks cannot replace him, his production, his impact, and what he means to this team. And now the Knicks are going to have to live without Randle for at least the next couple of weeks. That's going to be an issue in itself, but the only good news is that Randle is not going to miss a couple of months. It just looks like a couple of weeks. Going down the way Randle did, the pain that he was in, the fact that he didn't shoot the free throws, the fact that Tom Thibodeau and other NBA league personnel who watched the video and looked at it said it looked serious and that they were concerned. All of these things taken into account, you can understand why myself and a lot of other New York Knicks fans were concerned about Randle, this injury, and what it meant for the New York Knicks moving forward. But the good news here for Randle, as you can see, is that the MRI revealed no significant damage. Since that's the case, it all points to good things for the Knicks and Julius Randle moving forward. Now, obviously, you look at the timetable. They say a couple of weeks. I'm going to peg it at 4 to 6 weeks if nothing goes wrong in rehab, because you figure it takes 4 weeks to get back. Once you're back, you got to get conditioned, you got to practice, you got to take contact. That's at least another 2 weeks. So it's potentially that he might not come back for 4 to 6 weeks. If that's the case, the Knicks are going to have to survive without Randle for 4 to 6 weeks. And that's a tall ask because Julius Randle, again, not replaceable, is an all-star this year regardless if he wins it or not. And that's the level of play he's been given this Knicks team right alongside Jalen Brunson. With him out, the next person that needs to step up on this Knicks team is OG Anunoby. Now I expect it to be Jalen Brunson, the number 1 option on scoring, and then the number 2 option on scoring has to be OG Anunoby. Every single person on the New York Knicks needs to step up in Julius Randle's absence. That's how you make up for Randle. You're not going to be able to replace him, but that's at least how you can hope to make up for him. But there are other ways the New York Knicks could go out and try to replace Randle and that production. Not exactly, but to some degree. And according to Ian Begley, this is how they can go ahead and do it. According to Begley, he notes Randle's replacement, there are 11 days until the NBA trade deadline, so the Knicks have enough time to acquire a replacement for Randle. But get this update here. Listen to these names. Harrison Barnes, Miles Bridges, and Bruce Brown are among the players available via trade who could replace Randle. The Knicks had been considering Brown prior to Randle's injury. At that point, they had been looking for a ball handler/scorer with the second unit. They also had been in touch with some teams on a backup big man in case Isaiah Hartenstein's Achilles injury forced him to miss additional time. In addition to those scenarios, some within the club had been supportive of making no changes at the deadline. Given the situation now with Randle, according to Begley, maybe the Knicks now push harder for Brown, a player who already had significant support within the organization. Miles Bridges and Barnes would also help the Knicks in the short term. It's unknown if Sacramento would make Barnes available. They are obviously trying to win games. Bridges is attainable from Charlotte, but Bridges' 2022 felony domestic violence arrest and subsequent plea of no contest would presumably factor heavily into any consideration given to Bridges. All right, hold on for a second. Now listen, shout out to Julius Randle. I hope he gets better. Yes, we need more help. We needed more help before Randle was injured, so we definitely need more help now after Randle is injured. I definitely agree with that. But look at the names that he's mentioning. Some of the names we've never seen before. The only name I recognize on that list is Bruce Brown, because that's the one that's been most consistent. So for that one, I can entertain and we can talk about. But for the other names on that list, I got a bone to pick with some of those names, and we're going to address them right now, because there is no way. And I don't care what you're going to say about me in the comments. I don't care about the other players that got away with it. I don't care what happened 20 years ago. I don't care. You can say it till you're blue in the face in the comments at your phone. You can scream at me if you want to. I'm going to be very blunt when I say this. I do not want Miles Bridges on this team. I don't want him. I don't want that man on this team. You want to know why? Because I don't care how good of a basketball player he is. I don't care what he can do for this Knicks team. I'm a man of values and principle. And I am not going to jeopardize my principles and what I believe in to sign a player who could have an impact with all of these allegations tied to him. I am not going to do that to myself, my team, or my fan base. I would never put anybody through that. I think the Knicks know better, and they're not going to do that. I get the name. I get the understanding that he could help a team given his skill set in the NBA. But for me, some things are more than basketball. This is one of them. This is missing a human element aspect of things. I remember the things that I read and the stories. If you haven't, I urge you guys, go hit the Google machine and research why I don't want this guy on our team. But please understand, I'm saying it for a very good reason. I do not want Miles Bridges on this team. Mikal Bridges, you can sell me any day of the week. But that other Bridges guy in Charlotte, keep me away from him. Every single day. Don't want him on this Knicks team. He's a cancer. Don't want him. Next on the list is Harrison Barnes. Now, Harrison Barnes is actually having a pretty good season for the Kings. Not a great season, but pretty good. I can understand why he would be made available. They have a lot of young players over there. I'm not saying they don't need him. He's definitely a veteran over there. He has veteran presence. He's still playing very well, as I stated. But if they're looking to get more young, they want more pieces, and potentially they can get something significant back for him, I can see them moving him. Although, I don't know if the New York Knicks would make that move because they don't necessarily need him. Now, if he's available and he's available for the cheap, maybe the Knicks make a run for him because in the short term, he can definitely help. But once Randle comes back, I don't see him helping that much more. Maybe he gets a couple of minutes off the bench, but I don't know if the Knicks want to make a move for a player like that who's going to come off the bench. And I don't even know what the assets would likely have to be in order to get that player. So would you really want the Knicks to go after a player that might be short-term and give up assets for them? Because I don't think that makes sense in my opinion. I wouldn't go after him. The only player on this list that I would go after is Bruce Brown. And the only reason I am even mentioning his name is because I know internally, like Ian Begley stated, that a lot of people support Bruce Brown coming to the New York Knicks. I know he's the Tom Thibodeau favorite. I know he's going to give me defense. I know he can shoot the ball, so he'll help with spacing as well. So that's why I can justify that move a little bit more. And out of all the names on this list, the only player, if I had to make a choice, would be Bruce Brown. That's the player I would add if I had no other choices besides the one on this list. But honestly, there are other players on the board not mentioned here by Ian Begley that probably fit the Knicks better that they should look at and go after. And again, I say these names till I'm blue in the face, but I'll continue saying them. Tyus Jones and Daniel Gafford. Even more so now than before, you can make the argument that they would help you today, now, and of course, in the future, if you're looking to make a trade for a star or a superstar. So either way, it's beneficial if you make that move. Whether the Knicks do it or not is all up to value, price, and if they're even having discussions with the Wizards. But as of right now, at least according to Ian Begley, these are some of the names to watch. And for me, if these are the names to watch, then please go get Bruce Brown because he's the only name on that list that makes sense. But did you notice something else here? Because Begley snuck this line in at the end there, and I want to go ahead and review it again. In addition to those scenarios, some within the club had been supportive of making no changes at the deadline. You want to know why that is? Winning changes things. When you win dominantly and consecutively, and you look like one of the best teams in the entire league, yeah, it's going to change your original plans. So maybe you had original plans after OG Anunoby to trade for maybe 2 more players or 1 more player. But guess what happened? You started winning a lot. You started dominating teams, bad. You started blowing out teams, increasingly. When you do that, it changes where your plans are going to be and where you're looking to go. So I absolutely believe before the Julius Randle injury, the Knicks were going to stand pat and make no other moves besides OG Anunoby and maybe look at the buyout market and see if they can get another player that is impactful there. But the Randle injury, I think, forces them a little bit to make a move, more so than they wanted to before. Whether or not they do or not is up to Leon Rose and the New York Knicks. But that's not the only thing they can do, right? There are other things they can do. If they don't want to make a move, they don't want to trade, they want to hold on to their assets, then the other thing they can do is they can go ahead and push for staying pat. According to Begley, in the wake of the injury, the Knicks had considered sticking with what is currently on the roster. In this scenario, they would presumably move Quentin Grimes or Josh Hart to the starting lineup and rely heavily on their 8 healthy rotation players. OG Anunoby would move to the starting power forward spot. Against bigger teams, the Knicks could also turn to Jericho Sims. Evan Fournier becomes a more viable option if the club needs extra shooting off the bench. The Knicks would have absolutely stood pat had Randle not gone down with an injury. I absolutely believe that because winning changes you. When you look this good after the OG Anunoby trade and you have such good chemistry, do you want to make a move that potentially ruins that? And I think that's exactly where the Knicks were at. But now with the Randle injury, it might force them to make that trade. And I think it should. Because honestly, they needed to make a move before the Randle trade. Now, I think it puts it even more in perspective that they must make a move because if they don't, it's going to be a real struggle without Randle for the next few weeks. Now, again, like Begley stated, they could stand pat. And I think for the next couple of games, they will do that. Just to see how things look, how the offense is flowing, and if they keep winning. And if they keep winning, they might actually stand pat and wait for Randle to come back. Wait for Mitchell Robinson to come back. But if they lose some games, lose close games, or start getting blown out, that's going to change their dynamic and their direction, and they're going to probably make a move after that. Either way, that's what I see them doing at this point in time, given Randle's injury. So honestly, you can make the argument from both. You can make the argument why the New York Knicks likely may stand pat, or why the New York Knicks likely might make the trade. If you're asking me, they needed to make a trade before. They still need to make a trade now, even more so. So yes, in my opinion, the Knicks absolutely should make a trade. They should not stand pat, especially when you have Evan Fournier on your roster. Take him, trade him, and get another player of impact on this roster that can help stabilize this offense until Randle can come back. And then once he comes back and he can be worked back in the system, then we could take it from there and see what we want to do. But I think that's the direction the New York Knicks are going to go. They're going to wait. They're going to see how this Knicks team looks without Randle. And then based off of that play, they're going to make a decision. But what about you guys? What do you think about this major update on Julius Randle and the fact that he avoided significant damage? Let me know in the comments below, guys, because honestly, I would love to hear from you. But that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and smash that like button, leave a comment below, and of course, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knicks fans. Peace.